Exposing biases in game review scores. This was 3 years ago, but it's got an interesting title, and so I want to see what this video is about. Because even old videos probably have some pretty good quality, considering this guy only has 11,000 subscribers, but yet this video has almost 1 million views. Let's see if we can learn something about exposing biases in game reviews. Now, I've already heard like 5 seconds of this video, and it seems like he's probably gonna go over IGN. But yeah, just because I forgot to uh show, but this guy's name is Welfare Walrus. Interesting name. And this say exposing bias in game review scores is what we'll be reacting to today.
Ashley Johnson returned to add so much heart, honesty, joy, and sadness to the roles as Joel and Ellie, respectively.
Its uncomfortable and outdated mechanics make you feel frustratingly trapped.
The artfully detailed and realized locations Ellie travels through are layered with backstory.
It just feels cool.
Those clever designs are dressed with some of the most beautiful environments I've seen from the PlayStation 4 generation.
This game just feels constantly punishing for no reason.
While Part 2 is a thrilling adventure, it still makes time for a stunning, nuanced exploration of the strength and fragility of the human spirit.
Ultimately, the game winds up being an
Okay, just from looking at this for 30 seconds, I'm guessing it's because, like, since they have a ton of different reviewers in IGN, they probably had one reviewer, like, take on a kid's game, and this reviewer is, like, looking down at it because it's a kid's game, while some other reviewer that's reviewing The Last of Us, which is, like, a action drama game that's very adult, like just praises it, gives it 10 out of 10 stuff. If this was probably someone that was more accepting of kids games, he probably would have been like, oh, I give this an 8 or something. It has flaws, but something like that. But the serious adult game, 10 out of 10, praise writing and all of that.
pleasant nostalgia trip that nobody should pack their bags for.
Wait, they gave it a 2?
The human spirit.
Ultimately, the game winds up being an
I didn't think it was that bad. I thought he was going to give it a 6.
unpleasant nostalgia trip that nobody should pack their bags for.
Okay, no, I think that was a GameSpot review.
Given the recent controversy about The Last of Us 2, I bet viewers assume this is a video digging on the game or its fans. Well,
Also, I can't believe that SpongeBob Rehydrated is 3 years old, if not longer.
I actually really don't care about The Last of Us.
Go.
I just don't really like cinematic games very much to begin with, so had very little investment in the series one way or the other. However, I predicted something like this was going to happen. The issue of The Last of Us controversy isn't fully the developer's fault or the fault of the players who were disappointed by its sequel either. At least not completely. This controversy hits something deeper than that, an issue the gaming industry has had for a long time now. And that is, put simply, that video game critics and the video game fanbase at large don't share the same tastes. Now, this isn't exclusive to video games. Anything from movies to food has critics.
That's not actual size. Is it? Maybe it is. No chance. No chance that's the actual size.
The argument for why these people exist is that a critic is supposed to have a finer palate than that of the average consumer. The assumption goes that the uneducated masses don't really understand what is good and what isn't. The issue is, and I have statistical data to back it up, in the video game medium, critics aren't more discerning than the average gamer. In fact, it's the opposite. The power the Metacritic score has on a game's success cannot be understated. Of course, there are successful games with low scores and unsuccessful games with high scores. But to a video game publisher, a review score is a piece of marketing, and the higher that score goes, the easier it is to market their game. And it makes sense why. Video games are expensive. Unlike, say, a movie ticket, which usually only costs about $10 a viewing, a video game often costs $60 or more to purchase. So given the increased financial investment, it makes sense that while movies have a simple thumbs up or thumbs down style of review, most people aren't willing to purchase a game unless they are certain it isn't just good, but excellent, so a non-binary style of scoring system is required. But there are major issues that come from this style of system, and the result of this is developers pandering to reviewers above that of their actual fanbase. The idea of developers changing a game to appease to game journalists likely isn't a novel idea to anyone watching this video. There are multiple stories of games getting censored or changed after a game journalist makes or tries to make a
Sekiro Shadows Die Twice needs to respect its players and add an easy mode. Oh my god, I remember this. They were roasting this guy for this. Like, damn, dude. Do you really need an easy mode in this game? Like, come on.
Controversy over a subject. What people forget is that outside of free-to-play games, which tend to not get review scores, most game developers have to think about game critics during nearly every step of a game's design, and their specific tastes are a big reason why the current video game market is the way it is today. Just using my home country of America as an example, video game fan bases come from all cultures and interests as well as ages. You have the culturally diverse old guard of the fighting game community, then you have more casual gamers that just play whatever is advertised to them the most.
I really respect casual players, but man, I do hate when it's like it's the most newest thing that's being advertised the most. Like every casual player is playing it. You kind of need to play it to be with them. So yeah, I just hate that every casual person like always talks about the newest thing that's being marketed or that just releases. Like casual people usually aren't playing a game that's hardly known but is getting amazing game scores. It's always the biggest thing that's being shown off, which I do hate. I have people in my family that always tell me about the newest Call of Duty and stuff because that's always what's being marketed. They never ask me about any other games and stuff, and Madden and a couple of other series that I can't think of the top of my head, but it is a little frustrating to be told about the same series over and over again with no one ever being like, hey, check out this neat little game that I didn't expect to like.
There are also people who only like a specific genre.
This game is my game. Eh, I don't think this is me, but I'm like this game is so cool, guys. Please check it out, and no one fucking checks it out. I actually hate that so much.
Genre of game. For example, I know a lot of people that just play League of Legends or Dota and nothing else. Tastes also change based on the demographics, where people that just play League of Legends or Dota
Those aren't people though.
and nothing else. Tastes also change based on the demographics we're looking at. Things such as age, gender, or where you live is likely going to be a good indicator of the types of games you prefer. The diversity of the many tastes of players isn't reflected well in games journalism, however. As I will show in a bit, journalism bias doesn't affect all games equally. Like fast-paced complex action games? Sorry, most game journalists don't. Like old 90s style FPS? Well, tough luck. How about 3D platformers? Sorry, having to move vertically in 3D space is too frustrating for critics. You might just think I'm cherry picking, but no, I'm not. After going through the critic versus user scores of nearly 4,000 games, there are a few clear trends I found that I would like to share, which I think begin to show us the increasing divide between video game fans and the video game critics, as well as starting to explain why things have gotten to where they are today. The first thing I did was compare the difference between the average Metacritic score a game gets versus the same game's user score, and the average difference of this by year from 1996 to 2018. The result of this is a trend that as time went on, review scores became more and more positive compared to what the general audience felt on a game. Starting in 2009, reviewers started reviewing games more positively than that of user reviews. Before that year, from 1996 to 2008, every year showed
This game is terrible. Is that supposed to be a nostalgic critic? I mean, he's not wearing the right hat, but that outfit looks very much like his outfit.
reviewers criticizing games more harshly than that of the average player. As you can see, after 2009, there wasn't a single year where critics reviewed games harsher than fans. This positivity bias was greatest in bigger budget games or games made by large publishers, and smaller in indie games. So, am I implying reviewers are bought off by large corporations? After all, why would games made by megacorps get higher review scores? Well, no, I don't believe this is the case. At least not directly. You see, 2009 was around the
I'm guessing he's gonna mention how it's like if you're reviewing their game good, people usually expect to be given early access copies of the game. And so that's probably what he's gonna hit at, is that he's gonna be like, the critics are here giving their game great praise, and oh, look, these guys uploaded their review a day before everyone else, or the day of, before most normal people were able to get their review copy. And so that's probably going to be his thing on how game critics are being biased more than regular people.
point where print media was really starting to die, and online game critics were starting to become the bulk of game reviews. Unlike print magazine, which generally shipped on a monthly basis and so had a set schedule of when a review had to be finished by, with online reviewers releasing scores on the night of or even before a game's released, suddenly getting a review in on time or among the first
Yeah, night of and day before. I knew it.
became extremely important to review sites, since whoever released a review first is more likely to get views. While a video game publisher can't prevent reviewers from releasing a bad review of their game after a game is already released, though they have tried, they sure can
Wait,
determine who
what?
bad review of their game after a game is already released.
Sony's representative questioned one of the outlets' review of The Last of Us. Contacted him after he reviewed The Last and dispute some of the review's critical arguments.
Though they have tried, they sure can determine who gets to review a game before said game releases, through the process of handing out early review copies to specific online publications. What this results in is journalists tending to be nicer when reviewing big releases or games from large corporations, because as long as they aren't too harsh on a game, they'll be selected next time it's time to give out early review copies. This is why early review scores of major games are almost always better than the eventual Metacritic score a game eventually gets after it's finally released. So that more niche game you like made by a no-name company, it's not going to get the extra bump. Sorry. And again, while early review copies weren't exclusive to just online websites, it became far more important once magazines started getting phased out and replaced by gaming websites. This is likely why when comparing the difference between user and critic scores of top-rated games, as in games with a score of 90% or greater, from the 5-year period of 1996 to 2001 versus 2013 to 2018, we see a drastic difference in agreement. During the turn of the millennium, there was only a 0.5 scoring difference on average compared to a whopping average of 1.8 point difference. 1.8 might not at first sound too bad, but that's the difference between a game getting a 7.2 out of 10 versus a 9 out of 10. Now, I don't think
Hold on,
that's the difference
I want to make sure. So, reviewer bias in games rated from 90 to 100.
8-point difference. 1.8 might not at first sound too bad, but that's the difference between a game getting a 7.2 out of 10 versus a 9 out of 10. Now, I don't think early review copies are the only issue causing this huge difference in opinion. Going back to what I said about diversity, the simple fact is that video game critics don't have the same player diversity or experience as many of the fans of the medium. Looking at available information from the writers of gaming websites, it quickly becomes clear that the average video game critic is a male in their mid-20s to early 30s that live in a major city on the West Coast, most likely San Francisco. This might at first seem like a trivial bit of information.
Journalism has a class problem. I guess I kind of understand where they're coming from. So it means basically mostly the dude bros or like the artistic type of critics, because if it's from California where most like places have their HQ slash base of operation for things like studios for games or journalism, it's going to be middle class guys or girls and probably some not high class but some pretty there guys and girls that are nearly up in high class and barely down in middle class that can always afford games, and so they don't have the exact experience as people that were like playing whatever they had, and so it means they're just going through whatever games that they grabbed. It means they're just going through games like crazy, trying to just rush through it, not actually enjoy the games as most normal people would.
But it's important when understanding the specific bias game reviewers have. The fighting game community, for example, is much bigger in some areas of the United States than in others. It's also no secret that Texas is the holy land for Quake and Doom players. Taking this further, these sites serve the entire English-speaking world, not just a single country. Different countries contain players with differing tastes. If you're a developer that lives in, say, the UK, for example, you're going to have your game reviewed by majorly West Coast Americans. This is just conjecture on my end, but could this explain why most video games these days take place in America despite video games being developed by people from all around the world? Now, maybe what I said before wouldn't be so bad if video game reviewers were highly experienced players with a breadth of knowledge in the medium. If this were the case, maybe they could handle their innate biases to what games they do and don't like. But the sad fact is that nepotism, not knowledge of the subject matter, is often how people get.
Yeah, yeah, it's not people that actually like the game series to give it a critical view. It's whatever person they can get on the project. They're like, Dan, who hates shooters, go play the new Call of Duty, Halo, whatever. And he's like, yeah, I don't like how this game feels. This feels like shit. I can't kill anybody. Like, everyone keeps doing all these cheat moves and killing me before I even have the chance to turn around. And then Nate, who probably, as I gave like the example earlier, is into very dramatic games, and so getting paired playing SpongeBob, he's like he's giving it a worse review because he doesn't like SpongeBob and how it's a childish game.
Hired in this industry. Given this, it makes sense that most game critics live within a stone's throw of each other. It's a group of people that, for the most part, happen to know each other. This also explains the embarrassing lack of skill you often see from video game reviewers or their preferences for easier games.
Ah, that that's so infamous. The one guy that couldn't get over that little jump. It literally telling him the instructions right there. Hold for high jump, and then he was supposed to dash, but yet he couldn't do it. He was probably just tapping the regular jump over and over.
Remember that SpongeBob review at the beginning of the video? Here's that same reviewer not being able to figure out
Oh
a
my God.
quote-unquote puzzle made for literal children. Not only could a child solve this puzzle, actual ocean invertebrates solve more complex puzzles. As has been shown time and time again, a lot of these people aren't fit to be the vanguards of the gaming industry. And this shows in the data. SpongeBob wasn't the only platformer to get reviewed negatively by critics. Despite most games getting reviewed higher than fan reviews, 3D platformers get nearly a 0.5 reduction on average in review scores compared to user assessments. When we take Nintendo platformers out of the picture, this raises to nearly 0.6. The final, and in my opinion, greatest bias reviewers bring to a game review is that honestly, they didn't really get a chance to experience the game the way they were meant to be played. When you get a game to review, you have a deadline. What does this mean? It means beating the game on the easiest difficulty.
Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, these guys are playing it easy. They're playing it like fast because they're not truly enjoying the game. They're doing it as a job, and they have the deadline of getting it either the day before the game is released or the day of. Nobody wants to see the review after, even though I would arguably say that people would want to see it like no matter what, because I usually check like 4 or 5 places that review games, not just one, because I don't trust just one place's review. I make sure to check out everyone's review and then decide whether I want a game or not.
Turning on cheats, or avoiding combat altogether, because gosh darn it, it's Tuesday and I need to get this review out by tomorrow or I'm in serious trouble with my boss. So, think I'm just talking out of my hat? Reviewers admit to doing this all the time. And not just for The Last of Us either, pretty much for any big game. Here's one of the worst examples.
Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain style review events are part of the problem.
In my boot camp, reviewers were charging through missions wearing the chicken hat, which makes you invisible, almost completely ignoring Mother Base and all the side ops in the race for the end. Many, if not all, of the reviews that are already online were written by journalists who were forced to play MGS5 for 8 hours every day, in regimented time slots, while under instructions to share only the information that was deemed necessary by Konami higher-ups.
And when they don't go out and admit it, oftentimes it's found out anyway. If you beat a game but experience less than half of its content, or just rush through its content, do you really think you could give said game an honest review? Deadlines suck, but that's no excuse for rushing a review, which will ultimately create an uninformed assessment of the product being reviewed. So let's put this all together. What do you get? Well, I did notice, and likely others have too, that game reviewers tend to really like certain types of games over others. Among the genres that showed the highest positivity bias, third-person cinematic games and walking simulators showed a 0.8 and 0.95 bump respectively. So think about it. If you're a person who likely only plays video games casually and are given a strict deadline of when you have to beat and review a game, what game's going to be the most enjoyable to you? Let's say you've got to get your review out by tomorrow, so you enable cheats, put the game on the easiest difficulty, avoid most content, and just rush to beat it as fast as possible. What in the game can you actually honestly review? You can't give the combat or balancing a fair shake. You likely aren't an experienced enough player to understand the ins and outs of a game's combat system either. So what's left? Well, maybe the graphics were nice, or maybe you love the story or voice acting. Maybe a certain character was funny to you. So the most enjoyable games are going to be the ones that deliver on these aspects. Even I admit, if I only had a weekend to play a game, I probably wouldn't pick the most technical fighter or some 200 IQ RTS. By the time my time is up, I wouldn't have even understood the most basic gameplay elements yet, and I definitely wouldn't have enjoyed the experience much. I probably would have enjoyed a nice story-focused game more instead. You can see this in the review.
Oh, okay, so that makes a lot of sense on why story-focused games would be so much more easy. Something like Telltale, where it's literally supposed to be like 2 hours per episode. So you could probably get that out within a day, and probably each episode within a couple hours. So with some editing and other stuff, it's like, damn,
reviews for The Last of Us 2. Despite the fact that you spend around 90% of the game in combat or sneaking or managing resources, the story, animations, and characters make up the vast majority of the content of these reviews. Why? Because they're the only parts the critic got a decent taste of. Everything else is the reviewer playing the game of guess on very little actual experience what you think the things you're reviewing is like. If you like The Last of Us 2 or any other games reviewers also like, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just showing that these are the types of games critics, by the very nature of the review system, are going to gravitate to. And because of this, these are also the types of games big name developers are also going to gravitate to as well, because they know it tends to lead to better reviews. This is almost certainly why The Last of Us 2 has the option to enable a button that literally makes your character invisible to enemies, because they know this is something that a reviewer almost certainly wants, and makes the playtime of the reviewer more enjoyable. This is also likely why the new Crash game is getting an unlimited lives mode in its new installment. The sad fact is that because review scores mean so much for the sales of a game, it simply becomes riskier as a big-time publisher to make the games you know reviewers aren't going to like. It stifles the diversity and creativity of the games publishers are willing to fund because they know critics have a narrow range of games they're willing to like. This hurts gaming because it means a wide array of diverse tastes and people that play games aren't being properly catered to. It's well known that game journalists tend to really care about diversity and representation, or at the very least they say they do. But because of the
Hold on, wait.
that game journalists tend to really care about diversity and representation, or at the very
Yes, and man, Assassin's Creed controversially escapes. Yes, all men. Oh, I forgot if you can be all men in here, if you can even be a woman, but Jesus Christ, it's literally a side mode in this game. Like, it really doesn't matter about being a man or a woman. Like, they're all technically supposed to be this dude, but just because these guys are like co-op in his session, like they're just different characters. But okay.
at least they say they do. But because of the bias that comes from game critics being such a homogenous group themselves, many of the cultures that reside within gaming aren't getting the representation they really need. And that's a sense that the outside world cares about your hobby in the same way you do. Think for example of the fighting game community, a community made up in large part by poorer communities that started as gatherings around arcades. How often do gaming critics show an appreciation for the deep and complex mechanics this genre has to show? Or what of Eastern European games? It's no secret that Western games media has a bias against what many have considered Eurojink. Often critics see these games as frustratingly unfunctional and obtuse snorefests, but to their fans and the cultures that create them, they're unique and creative experiences made resourcefully and out of love. And don't get me started on the cultural atomic bomb that is game critics and their disdain for the expression of Japanese devs. Reviewers need to see genres on their own
I can't wait to eat the delicious sandwich. No, I don't like sandwich. Yeah, but I do. No.
terms rather than through the lens they often get both from their background and the short amount of time they get to assess a game.
A lot of these reviewers are predisposed to not liking certain food items, and I don't think that's right.
Hold on.
And they get to assess a game.
A lot of these reviewers are predisposed to not liking
Strong voice acting performance from the original game still do a heavy lifting. Entertaining boss fights, full of life, dull moment-to-moment gameplay, stubborn controls that show their age. Collectibles are either too simple or too tedious. They aren't rewarding. Combat interactions can feel completely unfair. Death is unforgiving in the worst way.
certain food items, and I don't think that's right. I mean, they're the reviewer after all. They're supposed to have the professional palate and be able to tell me if a tomato is crisp or not crisp. They can't just throw it off and be like, I don't review tomatoes. Oh, what are you,
Too
fucking
much
gay?
water.
So what's
Hold
my
on,
And
wait.
be like, I don't review tomatoes. Oh, what are you, fucking gay?
You fucking gay. Okay.
So what's my solution to this? Should only gaming experts like me get review copies? No, I don't think so. There are some types of games I simply don't care for, but that doesn't mean I think these games deserve a low score because of it. The major issue of the Metacritic is that the best games aren't going to be the ones that are liked by everyone, but instead the ones loved by the specific group of people they pander to. A piece of art that speaks to you specifically is always going to be the piece of art that we personally like the most. As I said earlier, I don't like cinematic games. Does that mean all cinematic games deserve low scores? Of course not. Rather than traditional Metacritic reviews, we should transition to more accurate and personal
Is this guy using My Hero Academia music? 'Cause I'm pretty sure that's where I recognize this music.
review systems. Traditional game reviews are kind of obsolete in the year 2020. Most people don't even read gaming site reviews, they just check the score. Sites like YouTube allow people to broadcast detailed opinions of games, and unlike random IGN reviews, you likely know if said content creator has tastes similar to yours. But an even better review system, in my opinion, is that of the user review system. Not necessarily the user review system that Metacritic has, but the system sites like Steam have. Steam used to display the Metacritic score on a game's store page, but later replaced it with user scores. But more importantly, these are from users that have already purchased and played the game. This means that the reviewers have already been self-selected for being into the specific type of game or genre the product is from, and likely have more expertise in it. Not only that, but unlike game journo scores, Steam review scores can update continuously, which better reflect the state of a game as time goes on, and gives players as much time as they want before reviewing a game. Sure, this might result in games that the general populace wouldn't be into getting a score far higher than what reviewers would give it, but let's be honest, if you're looking at the user review scores of a Japanese dating sim, it's because you already have an interest in Japanese dating sims. This has worked wonders for the games that the major gaming websites aren't willing to touch, or games that are in early access. Do I think Steam's user review system is perfect? No, but I do think it's a step in the right direction, and definitely a better option than what the current dogma is. To close, I feel there's a
I don't know what game this is, but this actually looks really cool. I kind of want to play this game. Kind of looks like you can be Spider-Man.
And definitely a better option than what the current dogma is. To close, I feel there's a lot of information that can come from this dataset I've been collecting and going through. As time goes on, I hope to update it and make a more comprehensive list showcasing reviewer bias as it applies to genres, publishers, and developers. If nothing else, maybe it could help players determine a better assessment of the game's quality than just what gaming review sites decide.
Alright, that was a pretty good video. Yeah, I feel like he probably hit every mark. Like, people are biased because of, like, their preferences and stuff like that. Just because you're a gaming critic doesn't mean that you're an expert at all games. Likely means that you are just working for a particular company, and so that kind of just gives you gaming critic, because whatever you say is probably going to be posted on the site at some point. But it's very likely you're going to be posting a game that you either are really looking forward to or really disliking. And depending on that bias, the score is either going to go up or down. It's very rare that people get paired up with a game that they think they're not going to like, but then actually really like. And then, yeah, because it's being worked as a job, people then have to reach the deadlines, which then can be trouble in itself, because they're trying to reach those deadlines. Because people are playing games like a job, they're trying to rush it, trying to make it to the deadline before even enjoying most of the game's content and really doing everything that you're supposed to when playing a game. And so that just makes it a terrible experience for the person that's playing the game, and that leads to a lower or higher score depending on what that company wants there to be said. Like I was talking about the Konami stuff, where it's like only do what's necessary, or like probably making the reviewer weaker because they didn't do a lot of combat, didn't do a lot of grinding. But yeah, this was an interesting video. I really enjoy finding this. It's an old video, but I still think it like holds up pretty well even 3 years later. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe to Welfare Walrus and give him a like on the video. Maybe check out his other videos if they're all like this, in the same quality. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed my reaction, please make sure to follow me on all my social medias, like my Twitter, my Twitch, my YouTube, my D-Line, my TikTok, my Kick, Rumble, Odyssey, and Dailymotion. Make sure to check out my second YouTube channel, and make sure to like and comment on all my videos, and even join my Discord. There you can stay up to date with everything I choose to do, whether my streams, videos, or anything else. But yeah, hope to see you guys next time. Bye.